Don't get your cardio like this. Or this. Or even, is this gonna keep, or even this. Instead, get it like this.
So how to warm up your fighter for a tournament or a ring or a cage fight. So oftentimes there can be a lot of extenuating circumstances. Maybe you've had to travel, maybe your sleep schedule is off, maybe your fighter's head is all over the place. You're fighting in a totally different spot and trying to bring some kind of normalization back to your fighter. One of the best things that I've found over time is just to get your fighter right in the headspace as quickly as possible. So I don't even really say much. I just kind of grab the fighter. Maybe the commission's already signed off on their hand wraps. Everything's kind of good to go. I don't know what number they are on the card, but if they're pretty early, you'll need to start this earlier. If they're a little bit later on the card, just maybe chill out for a little while and try to let your fighter's thoughts and anxiety kind of come down a little bit. Sometimes it's better to think through things rather than just try to pretend that they're not there. So what I'll do oftentimes is I'll grab the athlete or the fighter, and maybe they're fighting in Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, MMA, whatever it is. Just be specific to the sport, and I'll just do simple things. I'll be like, hey, we got our gloves on. They might not be the fight gloves. They might be his own. And just start throwing some jabs, just nice and light. We're just moving around and trying to get his body moving. In reality, what we're trying to do is get the head out of all the other thoughts and circumstances that might be going on, and just remind him and his body that we've done this thousands and thousands of times in our fight camps and in our training, trying to bring him back to the point that, yes, I can do this. And we can't be thinking of every single tiny little detail. We need to think a little bit more generally. So for example, if he jabs, I might very slowly come back with some kind of a shot. And he needs to have a response to that. Again, we're just trying to remind the brain that we've done all this before and we're not doing anything foreign. We just might be in a foreign place, training it with a different environment. So nice and light, we're throwing a jab, just moving around. You might do that for 5 or 10 minutes, maybe add the cross. So pop, jab, cross, pop, pop. We're there. And just simple communications. You know, I'll try to mix it up a little bit as we get going. Be like, okay, jab, cross, come back, knee. We're just moving, jab, cross, knee, good, and again. Every once in a while throwing in, like, say, a surprise shot, or he's got a check. Very slow, just things where his brain can start to engage a little bit. And all of a sudden you can see a little bit of that anxiety start to spread away. You can see your fighters start to relax and breathe a little bit. And as soon as you start to see their reactions get a little bit sharper every single movement that they're doing, you can know that you can start pouring on a little bit more. Now, as their coach, you're going to know their weaknesses and you're going to know their strengths. So if you come at them with a whole tidal wave of all their weaknesses, you're going to screw with their head before they walk out to the fight. So try to work about 60-70% on their strengths, and then throw a few weak shots at them. Let's say Dan was poor at blocking the body shot. I might throw that in a couple of times just to remind him to keep the stomach flexed. Also make sure that you're working on anything specific. So let's say we were working on my partner slipping the cross and then coming back with a shovel. If that's something that we worked on in our fight plan or our fight game, then I'm going to work that with my partner. Try to make sure that he's warming up with very familiar drills. Stuff that we worked on and we implemented when we were watching the tape on his opponent. Now, depending on where you're fighting, what style you're fighting, the commission may walk in and say, hey, it's about 15 minutes till you're up and on deck. And that could speed up quite quickly if that person gets knocked out in the first 10 seconds. The fight before can happen very quickly or it can go the whole distance. We don't know. So it's best to be about 60 or 70% warmed up until you have an exact time. Then right at that last moment, you can start doing some speed drills or get into some heavier drills to really warm up your opponent. I've seen some guys, it's just like, okay, 50 burpees, go. I would rather warm up my partner with skill drills. So for example, I could say something like shadow boxing drill number 1. And even though this isn't warming up the whole body, we can start pouring on the steam to get our partner that last little bit before he warms up. Now, maybe lastly, to try to talk about this, as a coach, you should know your athlete. You should know where their cardio is at, where their weaknesses are, where their strengths are. Don't push someone too far. So if I was like, Dan, do 500 burpees before the fight starts, and now he's just bagged before he walks into, you know, his title match potentially, I've just screwed him as a coach. So I want to be in a position where it's like, hey, I know my athlete could rip off, you know, about 500 strikes or so. So that's what we're going to do at a high pace before he gets past his first win and hopefully dumps all that anxiety as well. Now he's ready to go. And he has hopefully about 5 or 10 minutes before he's walking out to the cage or into the ring or onto the mat or whatever he's doing to try to just reacclimate everything that's going on in his head, all the training that we've done, and his body is awake and feels good. So maybe even before that is if your opponent is really stiff and rigid, you could even start before your bag work or your pad work or your wrestling drills. Just start with some light stretching. Try to get their mind off whatever's floating around in their head before you get started. And at Heyo Dojo, what we like to do is give each other a nice 5-finger slap across the face just before you walk out. It's a nice little adrenaline dump just to kind of get you in the mood before the cage. And I think it works.
I think so.
Thanks for checking us out, guys.